Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Mark Dirks, and on behalf of ACRL and Choice, I'd like to welcome you to today's program, Transform Your Discovery Approach, A New Vision, which is sponsored by Ex Libris, a ProQuest company. Today's discussion is one in a series of sponsored webinars from ACRL and Choice that addresses new ideas, developments, and products of interest to the academic library community. Free to users, these structured 60-minute live presentations provide the opportunity for interactive discussions of important new issues in academic librarianship by librarians, vendors, authors, and other interested stakeholders. Before we get started, I'd like to point out a few features of the webinar software. In the main area of the screen, you should be able to follow along with the presentation materials. Along the right-hand side, you should see a Q&A panel and a chat panel. If you don't, there's a little dialog cloud button sort of in the middle of the bottom of your screen. That will open up the chat panel, and the Q&A you can find probably in the little 3 dots button next to that dialog cloud. Please use the Q&A panel to submit questions to our speakers. We'll hold all of those for the end when we'll have a dedicated question and answer time. So please feel free to send them in throughout the presentation, and we will get to as many as we have time for. If you have any technical issues, you can use the chat panel to let me know about that, and I will troubleshoot the issue with you privately there. Today, we are using the hashtag ACRLChoiceWebinars, so please feel free to shout out to us. We're at choice_reviews on Twitter. Also note that we are recording today's program, so everyone who registered should receive a link to that recording within about 24 hours of the event. All right, so our speakers today are Christine Stone, Director of Product Management at Ex Libris, and Ellen Jones, who is the Director, Digital Library and Technical Services at the New School Libraries and Archives. So with that, we are ready to get started. So I'll pass the ball over to you, Christine.
Thank you, Mark. Can I already move the slides? I think you passed it on to Ellen, actually.
I did pass it to Ellen. That was my mistake. Apologies.
No problem. Okay, thank you very much. So hello, everyone. And in my presentation today, I want to talk about how discovery is changing and especially how we can use data intelligence to create a better and more advanced discovery. I'm starting with a couple of slides about discovery in general to give some more background before diving into the more specific topic. And I also want to make 2 specific points, which I think are important here. Originally, when discovery systems started to emerge in the library environment, it was a measure to move with the library catalogs to a more modern user experience, and also to give access to the vast increasing amount of electronic material. That is still true today, but library discovery has become far more than just a search system. Library discovery systems can open doors, and that is my first main point here. I find this very important. Of course, the single search box experience and access to the library collection is important. Today, we have a mass of material. We have published and aggregator content, digital repositories, research outputs such as research data, of course, a lot of open access content, material from the library collections, including, of course, the print material, audiovisual material, and so on. So there's a lot of data that we index. In addition, we pull in information from external services that is used to enrich the indexed data. That could be Altmetrics, for example, or Synthetics Unbound. And I come back to this later on in this presentation because, again, I think this is a very important point. But because of the size of the indexes and the often very special nature of the collections, we need to think beyond the one search box approach. So add-on functions, for example, like more like this, are very useful to find the right material. So library discovery provides information, but it also is a gateway to information. And that is how we design our systems. So for example, apart from the one search box, we are also providing options to recommend further resources. So this is also a gateway for those resources. So again, library discovery is a lot about opening different doors for the users. The Second, more general point I would like to make is that as much as discovery systems opens doors, there are also many doors to discovery. Discovery needs to be where the user is, not necessarily expect the user to come to the system or the library. And the value it brings needs to be self-evident. We're looking at simple ways to integrate the search box into other systems that are important for the user's daily workflows. That means, for example, that we provide direct access from learning and research services. We do this certainly for our own systems, like the Leganto reading list or Esploro as a research platform, but it certainly also applies to other systems. There are options to highlight specific collections, for example, with the collection discovery tool Primo, and to integrate this with places where users work. And linked data, of course, is a very important aspect. It allows you to publish your data to search engines like Google, where your users might be, but maybe also to offer library service in other platforms like social media. And the integration with open source discovery layers of third-party systems is also, of course, important for many of our customers. So our approach to discovery is to bring all this together. And again, the 2 points I wanted to make in this, this introduction are about opening doors and about having a lot of doors that go to discovery. And I come back to this later on in this presentation. So after the general points, let's look at the changes that are happening in our environment. It's really rapidly changing and evolving. We see a substantial rise in the amount of material, but also in the material types actually that we index. Our index contains more than 3 billion records, and that's increasing really, really fast. At the same time, we have new technologies delivering more processing power for big data. That means that we have now actually capabilities to process vast amount of data much faster than ever before. And also very important not to forget, users are increasingly influenced by social media and consumer platforms and what they see there. They're used to recommendations, to push services, to personalization, for example. And that also influences how they view and what they expect from our systems, what they, for example, view as intuitive and what they also see as hurdles. Perception is changing with the environment users grow up with. So the challenge is that we have an increasing amount of data, and we need to make sure make sure that we can use new technologies to tailor discovery to user needs that is also changing. And for that, we need to get more creative and also to rethink and to transform discovery, and maybe also to change our view of what discovery is. So for meeting the challenge, first of all, we are looking more and more at the use of intelligence that is gained from data processing and essentially data science to create services. We have these big data repositories with our discovery index, but also with usage data, for example, clickstreams and the likes. That can help us to create contextual services to help users to sift through material. From user studies, we know that users quite often are not sure about the topic they need material for. We even found this with graduates and researchers, although they seem confident, first of all, in their topic area. But on a second look, there are actually lots of unknowns, and they need to branch out and find the right keywords that help to do their searches. So we need to create entry points for them that goes beyond the one search result list. Apart from creating those services, we also need to create a repository that allows us to make better use of the data that we have, especially in future or for future services. Basically, consolidate the different indexes and create one big repository that services as the central discovery index. I hope I'm not going too fast, but yeah, there are lots of different things here to cover. So those of you who use our systems probably already saw the announcement that we are creating a new advanced discovery index, which is simply called CDI, Central Discovery Index. CDI will replace the current Summon and Primo central indexes, and it will also serve as one central index for both Primo and Summon. I should emphasize that we maintain our two flagship discovery systems, Primo and Summon, and that does not change. We just change the central index. That has a lot of advantages. First of all, it will enable us to ingest data faster, to update data faster, of course, and also to achieve better quality data. It will also, and that is coming back to the data intelligence topic, enable us to focus better on creating smart services as part of our discovery workflows. Basically, it is about being ready for the future. Where we are moving to is to have data intelligence at the core of our systems. We are, for example, focusing on data relations and relationship graphs. And I'll show you briefly what this looks like in the flow. We have Primo and Summon. Both access the central discovery index for search in the Ex Libris provided data pools. And in addition, we are in the process of building a graph database that holds relationships between the indexed items. And we also have, of course, the locally indexed data. In the case of Summon, this data is actually stored in the central index as well. In the case of Primo, we have separate indexes. And in both cases, this stays the same with CDI. We're not going to change that. But the point here is that we will create relations across the indexes. For example, if we create a relationship between a book and a book review, the book might be in the local index and the book review, of course, in the central index because it's coming from electronic material and so on. Of course, this is not something that is happening overnight. These parts are parts of a project that is running throughout 2019. And in the case of CDI, the majority of our customers will actually move in 2020. So we'll have a project that goes over 2 years. And the move will be seamless for our customers. So you will just switch to the new index if you use Primo or Summon. Let's have a look at the relationship graphs. I show here some examples. Some relations are, of course, more straightforward than others. You have relations between works and their references, other works that are citing them. Articles might have a close relation because they're published in a specific special topic issue of a journal. The author is, of course, a connection. Articles and research data they're using. We index increasingly institutional repositories and databases or data sources like DataCite. The awareness of the need to create machine-readable connection or readable connecting identifiers in this area is increasing, and therefore we also see an increasing ability to create such connections. Of course, the identifiers are very important to identify those connections. We have usage-based connections. You might have heard about the VX recommender that creates connections based on what users use together, basically their click streams, similar to services you find on Amazon or other more consumer-based websites. And then there are, of course, topic connections. Different articles can share a combination of different topics, and I will talk about this a bit more in a moment. All of these are direct connections to my article in the middle, but they're also in a transitive way related to each other. So I can create strong direct connections, but also connections that are across different groups, and that can also offer interesting insights or create the basis for a new service. This is all probably a bit abstract, but it is the basis here for creating smart services, smart discovery service, and it gives users more context and also provides a sort of serendipitous discovery experience. And I illustrate this more with some examples. So first of all, this is kind of an overview what we have today and what we are actually working on. Not all of this is released as a service yet. Those of you using our systems probably already know about BX and probably also about the citation trail. Both are services that have been around for a while actually. The citation trail has been in Primo for a couple of years and it's now also available in Summon. BX creates recommendations based on usage. It captures usage from the link resolvers. It creates a network of usage-based connections. And it evaluates articles to suggest to a user based on an article the user is looking at. So the article is the starting point, and then it looks up all the connections and suggests other articles that might be relevant here. The citation trail is using connections from items that cite each other. We designed it in a way that it provides a discovery trail, and I'll show you this in a minute. We are also working on other services. One is about formal relationships. That's what I already mentioned, books to book reviews, but also book chapters to other chapters of the same book, articles to research data, and so on. And the last one is to enhance topic exploration. I start with the BX recommender. I searched for health and chocolate here, and I find an article. The recommender finds other articles that are about the same or similar topics, and you can see here on the right-hand side the list that's a screenshot from Summon. Not all have the same keywords. For example, the second one, it offers different aspects that might be of interest and also provide the user with more subtopics to look for. And of course, it provides also more material based on the first entry point, the first article I looked at. So that's also an advantage that I find very quickly additional material without having to start a new search. The citation trail also uses an article as the entry point. It allows the users to browse through lists of citing and cited articles and therefore look at other items that are related to the first one. The citation trail goes beyond suggesting a list of related items. It allows the user to go from one list to the next list and the next list. So for example, here I have my first article. This is my entry point here. And then I can go forward and click on the little icon that is the citing and cited by. I get my first list of sources that are cited in my first article, and then I can click just at the next one, and I get the next list and the next list. And on top, I have my trail or my path, and I can at every time. At every point, I see where I am, and I can go back and I can go forward. So this is a real trail. It actually kind of replicates a very common way that journal article readers use for find additional content. They do exactly the same. They look at the reference list, they find more interesting material, they go to the next reference list, and so on. So this is basically a new way to present an existing information-seeking behavior that many users are already familiar with. The two previous services, that is the BX Recommend and Citation Trail, already exist. We are now working on additional services to complement them. I showed earlier that we created a graph database of relations. We plan to add to this database different types of relations. We start with something simpler. For example, here with connecting book chapters with chapters of the same book. And then we move on to some more difficult ones, like connecting books and book reviews, where you don't always have a direct relationship, and it's sometimes a little bit difficult to use identifiers or use the metadata to connect them. What you see here is a very initial design. It will probably not look exactly like this when we release it, but this should just give you a good idea how this could look like for the user. So we have a book chapter as the entry point, and I show a link in the detailed view. You see this link on top here, and if I click on it, I get the other chapters of the same book listed in this list here. Another example, I have a connection between book and book reviews. That's what I also mentioned already. We have a book in the result list. I can open the detailed view. I see that there are book reviews available. It's maybe a little bit difficult to see here, but you see this as a link on top. And then I can go into the list. Again, I get on top the book where I'm coming from, and then I get the list of the book reviews here. We will build those relations up slowly. For example, the book-to-book review match is not always simple one. I already mentioned that. We will certainly not capture everything immediately. This will grow over time. Generally, this applies to all connections between material. They all grow over time. These services use formal relationship, and they really create context and provide the user with more material, and essentially also provide a learning experience. Another example of using connections, this time informal connections, is topic exploration. We have the topic explorer function on Summon. This is something that already exists for a while. This shows an overview, but also generates suggestions for more related topics to search. Again, this function has existed for a while, but now, and that is kind of a peek under the hood of our data lab, we are experimenting with some ideas to extend the service. And I would like to show you briefly how this could look like in future. Just to emphasize, this is a research project from our data lab. This is not something that we are going to release tomorrow. So in this example, I have an indication in the result list that there are topic connections available. You see this on the right-hand side in my brief result list, and I can just click on it. And I get a page that shows, first of all, on top the topics for the article I'm coming from that have the most weight, or in other words, the strongest connection with the article. The new result list shows other articles that have the same or similar topic connections. I can choose one or more topics from the topic pane and get yet another result list with items that are connected to those topics. So I can basically go from one to the next one to the next one, explore the topic, see what other topics are connected to them, and also see material that is connected to those topics. So this is how a topic trail really could look like. As I said, it is in an experimenting stage. We might come out with a small proof of concept feature later this year to be able to try this out from the user perspective, really. It depends on how the work is progressing. So this is just to give you an idea what might be possible in future and what services we could offer users to learn more and also to find more material. I said earlier that nobody is going to do everything, really. There are many new services and projects out there that can offer substantial value to users when integrated into discovery. Services that extend the discovery experience, but also new delivery methods, for example. So they're browsing, unpaywall, altmetrics, just to name a few of them. Some of them are subscription services and some of them might be free. So I would like to show you how this could look like with Synthetix Unbound, which is also an external service, obviously. So with Synthetix, you can pull in exploration services and more information for books. In this example, I have the Oxford Companion of British History, and you can see on the right-hand side recommendations for other books pulled in from Synthetix Unbound. But it also offers other services. So here you can see that we have a look inside feature, for example, or you can check out reader reviews if there are any, of course. And the user can look up also professional reviews and also see other versions of the same book. Our goal as a discovery provider here is to offer tools to integrate services that libraries choose for their users. I would like to point out, for example, Primo Studio here, which allows the community to provide add-ons and publish them for everyone to use. It's not just about one provider to provide everything, but also to work with the community and to enable the community to contribute, and that really adds significant value to discovery. The benefit for the user, the goal here is to help the user to find what they need and also have a learning experience. There are very distinct benefits with such services. So users can find easily and fast material with only one search, of course. The user finds an entry point. The system provides contextual services and discovery paths from that entry point. The features provide a serendipitous discovery experience. They are also intuitive because today's users are coming from environments where they are used to such services and they have a certain expectation to see the same on discovery. They can learn more about the topic by finding keywords they did not previously think about, maybe. And we are creating context around material as well. With the mass of material available, this is becoming increasingly important, I think. This is a slide that I already showed at the beginning, and now at the end of my presentation, I would like to come back to this because I find it important. Library Discover can open doors to many things. There is, of course, the one search experience, and we will always have users who come to the system, search for a specific book or article, and all they want is to find it and to get it. But even for them, add-on services can be very relevant and also very welcome. It can save users time and provide a more efficient way to learn about a topic as well as gathering material. Discovery should never be a dead end. It should be a gateway to other services and other information as needed by the user. And I think also context is an important concept for discovery today. And we are looking at users who come with different expectations and perceptions than that we had 10 years ago. So again, it's really about opening doors and about treating the discovery system not just as a search system, but also as something that can lead to other things. So coming to my summary, big data is transforming our world, and that brings a lot of challenges, but it's also quite exciting because it's also bringing us opportunities. We're looking increasingly beyond indexing or beyond just indexing the data. Data intelligence becomes a core part of our discovery systems. I think the future is very much about transforming of discovery to move from simple search systems that we originally had to a really intelligent and contextual discovery experience. And lastly, library discovery can and should open doors. And there are also and can and should be many doors to library discovery. Discovery needs to move into places where users already are. That is specifically their academic ecosystem, reading lists, virtual learning environments, or research environments, and so on. But also Google and other services they may use. Library services are essential to their success. That's at least my opinion, but it needs to be part of their processes and not really stand isolated. And with that, I'm going to pass this on to Alan.
Can everyone hear me?
I can hear you, so I think, yes, yeah.
Yes. Okay, excellent. Thank you. I'm going to take this, say many of the same things that Christine said. So, although I'm going to take this a little bit from a different perspective in terms of different types of services that this may or may not inform. I'd like to start out thanking people, most importantly, my university librarian who actually gives me time to play with this kind of stuff. The folks at NYU Libraries who are actually providing some of the context for us to actually do some of this playing. The user communities of Illuna and Igloo, the Ex Libris user group of North America, and the international group of Ex Libris users. The product working community for Primo is very live, is very active, and very vocal. And so it's been a pleasure actually chairing the working group and hearing feedback and also hearing ideas about how things can actually move forward. Finally, we're part of another consortium, which is the Pennsylvania Academic Library Consortium, and some folks over at Project Reshare, which is an open source resource sharing project that PALCI has initiated. Many of the issues that we've had in terms of the limits of what it is that discovery is, that project is actually in response to, and I find both the conversations as well as the thinking around it cutting, if not bleeding edge at times. And so it's interesting to think of big data, both in the context of Ex Libris and also outside of Ex Libris, and how some of that information is actually going to get into some of these vended systems, and to think about how open source and vendor actually can work together as opposed to being in competition with one another. And of course, I want to thank some of the folks at Ex Libris. They know me, I think, in some ways as much as I know them, and the conversations have been very useful in thinking about Primo, thinking about Alma, thinking about Summon as these discovery products, and thinking about kind of what the next generation of these are. Thinking about working with Primo VE, as well as other feature sets of the current Primo software has really been fascinating. I'm going to actually focus on 5 different areas. One is to talk about some of the expectations that searchers actually bring to the Primo or the Summon or discovery application. Actually talk about the slippery slope of what is actually being searched when we talk about collections. Christine talked a little bit about the index. I'm going to refer back to it for a minute, so a slight reprise or return. And then I want to talk a little bit about search intelligence and microservice, because I think that they're important to talk about as ways of perspectives of thinking about how we actually going to use this big data. So first, I want to talk a little bit about what are the models that people are actually bringing to search. Not embarrassingly so, here's my Netflix screen, my Amazon screen, my YouTube screen, my Google screen. When I search nature, obviously, not only is it a promoted link, but it's also a link that has multiple different meanings. Somehow, the preference of a journal title, Google already knows. And I think that this is important when thinking about intelligence, not just from the perspective of retrieval, but also in thinking about different types of contexts that may already be going into the calculation of these results that we may not necessarily be aware of. And finally, the mother of all search, Google, in terms of what actually comes up when we're searching. These types of applications are the applications that our users are actually bringing when they come to the library discovery layer. Just taking a look here at the applications that patrons are using, Obviously, Google with some of the highest level of engagement, and you can see on down, Wikipedia is as well. Not only is it interesting to think about the destination, certainly the low percentage of traffic coming from search for Google, but also the amount of search that's actually coming from Wikipedia, I think, is equally telling in what it is that Christine was talking about in terms of getting people to the discovery layer, as well as bringing them from the discovery layer to their content. So if patrons are using search in other areas of their life, how might the library be able to leverage this experience instead of, as I said, building a competitor to it? Jacob Nielsen is a very well-known writer within the usability community, and his first law, I think, makes a lot of sense as we think about search, which is users spend most of their time on other sites, and they apply those mental models of scanning search results, requesting material, finding recommendations or related materials, viewing media, browsing images, and getting inspired in some ways. All of these are functions that the discovery layer is actually bringing up, but there are already applications that are doing this in other areas of people's life. Those mental models that they're actually bringing from those sites are now being applied to our library-specific search experience, and it's important that these applications actually inform the applications that we're actually building. So one of the things that I think is important, an important existential question to ask is the goal to create a destination for search, or is it to publish results to other search engines for indexing and discovery? In other words, does Google just do search so well that we should just completely forget about the discovery layer? Well, in my mind, the answer is both. We should be looking for ways to publish our sitemaps, and then we should also be looking for ways to so that items are searchable in Google. But then we should also be providing an immersive best practice or best case discovery experience using some of the data that Christine was talking about. As I pointed out before, ironically enough, the amount of time that people actually spend on Google is the highest amount of any of the search sites that are out there. The fact that people are spending 8 minutes looking at 10 pages, looking at the number of sites that they're actually indexing, that's not the number of pages, that's the number of domains. So I want to be clear there, is absolutely staggering. And again, I want to point back to the fact that even though something like Amazon has almost a quarter of its traffic actually generated from a search engine, it doesn't necessarily mean that they're giving up the search experience completely. I would say that this is a lesson that we can certainly learn within libraries. So a way to potentially think about this would be, as I said, building a search tool for patrons that's both immersive, that's thinking about things like rich media, that's thinking about things like related items and building relationships between results, but also publishing sitemaps to Google and other search services. So one particular way of maybe thinking about this would be that if we are searching or publishing our sitemaps and having them indexed into Google, maybe we don't necessarily have to have these search results boosted for everyone. Maybe if we're using Google EDU services, we can actually look at the domain names and actually boost those records that actually have the domain name of the library. These are the types of things that we can and should be thinking about when we're thinking about the Google experience, not necessarily just preferencing and pushing up results for everyone, but maybe specific sectors of populations that have specific types of criteria, maybe things like physical location. Go to Google and type in the word auto repair, and depending on where you are, it'll tell you different types of localized material. Now, you're not necessarily putting your zip code into that search, but Google is actually taking some of those contextual information and actually applying it to your search, and then setting certain parameters and boosting certain results that match criteria that aren't necessarily submitted, but are part of the state of your actual search. I think that there are really important lessons that can be learned from this, particularly for those institutions that are using Google EDU services or Google authentication services, where domain mapping can actually help in some of this boosting in ways that are not necessarily applied to everyone equally. Because if all of the libraries are actually trying to boost all of their results at once, does that really make sense? Because we're all in competition with one another. So this is one potential proposal that we're actually looking at for sitemap in terms of boosting, and I think it's something that we should be paying attention to. In essence, learning some of the lessons from contextualized, personalized search from Google and seeing if we can actually apply it to the discovery service. The second thing that I think we can all agree on is that the discovery, the concept of the collection has actually changed. When actually looking at some features that users wanted, one of the things that I was a little astonished by was how time is becoming an increasingly important facet for patrons to use when they're thinking about how to retrieve things. So for example, they want to know how long they can have the item. They want to know if they can get it right now. They want to know if they can't get it now, how long is it going to take to get? And something that, being in New York, I guess I've always thought everything needs to be delivered. But one of the things that we've also learned in having conversations with colleagues within Reshare is that many times people want to know where the item is so that they can actually drive over there to get it. So they're as much interested in getting directions, car directions to that book, as much as they are in getting the book delivered to them. And so these types of services are services that aren't necessarily baked within the metadata of the actual item, but they're related services and calculations that are that users increasingly want in order to shape their discovery experience. So a traditional OPAC basically had the locally held collection. It had maybe your institutional repository, and we basically, with the addition of something like Primo Central or Summon, it also included our licensed content. Well, yeah, that was very kind of 4 or 5 years ago, but now we've increasingly included DDA, open access or open education content, as well as consortial holdings. And all of this needs to be in a single discovery experience instead of sending people elsewhere to other places. They're expecting the limits of the discovery service in some ways to push the boundary of what's searched and what isn't. And it's these types of boundaries that are really beginning to push big data. So the catalog then becomes about what you can get and not necessarily about what it is that you own. So I think that's a really important transition that we have to begin thinking about. Reshare, for example, is thinking specifically about this. Certainly, graph databases and other types of relational databases are also thinking about this. People who got this also wanted these other things. These other things happen to be physically close to you. These other things are not. All of these kind of contextual pieces of information, as well as information that's in traditional descriptive metadata, needs to be taken into account for the next generation discovery experience. So, as I said, results need to include context as well as content. They'll need to be smarter. They'll need to be contextual. They'll need to be personalized. the user profile, the geographic location, even the query itself will help shape results. And what I mean by this is that natural language processing can provide a lot of clues to what used to be pre-filters. So for example, if you remember in the old Primo, the classic Primo interface, there was a drop-down menu that asks the question, do you want images? Do you only want to see audio? Do you only want to see video? Do you want to see books, etc.? Now we're looking at things where the actual question guides the type of resource types that are actually delivered within the result set. So for example, where is returns maps? Who is returns biographies? When is returns dates and calendars? How do I returns FAQs or articles? What is dictionary entries? Show me images, videos, etc. Even the length of the query is actually important here. For example, in that nature example that I showed before, the fact that something was a journal title match should prioritize that, particularly in an academic context, that's what nature means to me. However, it might also be an author name. It may also be a title of an article or a title of a book. Longer queries tend to be known item searches. Shorter queries tend to be more either browse or topical types of searches. And with that type of knowledge, we can create a context for a much more immersive search experience. So just a shameless plug, along some of these lines, there's the Ex Libris user group actually has conferences. Greg Davis is actually going to be talking about connecting Primo to Alexa to not only think about this in terms of a visual interface that actually needs to be connected to Primo, but also voice-enabled interfaces. There was a presentation that was done in St. Petersburg a couple of years ago on Chatty Discovery that was actually looking at connecting Slack to a chatbot that was then connected to Primo as well, and it was returning articles and books and actually renewing books online. The demo is in my list of slides here. It's actually pretty amazing. So we're again focusing much more on a search experience instead of a search result. The two people who were really important in teaching me this, John Rockin from Johns Hopkins and Scott Dalton from NYU Libraries, worked on an application called Umlaut, which was a presentation layer for SFX. And one of the things that Scott introduced me to was this concept of microservices, or a software approach that basically de-emphasizes this big monolithic piece of software that does everything and really begins looking at the presentation layer as a bunch of different applications that's going out and retrieving data from different data sources. So let's take something that we know is a painful experience, interlibrary loan, for example. Somebody goes through the discovery service or they go through a database, they get to the place and they're basically in a frustrated search. They go to a link that opens up another window. That window has a form. That form, they have to add a note, and then they click submit. I'm going to share my desktop here for a second. Okay. And maybe think a little bit differently about what the interlibrary loan experience should actually be. So I find this particular item. I see that it's not available at BOPST, and I've got to do something. Well, in the old model, I would have to click on a link. That link would open up another application. I would go to Iliad. I would fill out my web pages, and I would hit send request, taking the user out of the user experience or out of the discovery experience to another application. And maybe they remembered to go back. Maybe they didn't. In this particular case, all I'm doing is hitting send request. Now that's taken all of the bibliographic information, all of the login information. It sends that to a database table, which then runs an API call against our EasyBorrow service And if it's not available in Easy Borrow, then it actually sends the item over to Iliad. So all of this automation is happening behind the scenes, but the user is never actually taken to those applications. It's submitted directly to those services on their behalf. Jeff Peterson's Hadi Trust, BX Recommender, as well as some things from Notre Dame. And you can see here that these microservices actually take the metadata from the session that's within Primo, sends the service to a server, and then basically gives the user an interaction to say that that thing has actually succeeded. Now, putting this kind of model on steroids, you have somebody like the National Museum of Art actually delivering rich media experiences where the material can actually be zoomed in, it can be annotated, it can be shared, all within the discovery layer. Never taking them to another system or another digital asset management system, but staying within the context of the discovery experience. And really, that's the goal, is to keep people within the discovery service and actually engaged and looking at related media. And getting them the material that they need, whether it's a video, whether it's an ebook, that should be the gold standard. So again, the interface isn't static, but it's a production of media or microservices running within all levels of the application. Some components of the page finish at runtime, but others are actually waiting for the user to actually interact with it. And then as the user is interacting with it, the interface changes them, giving them feedback that something has happened. And it's actually an engagement experience rather than an information delivery experience. So I just want to say a few conclusions. The goal then is to get the users to discovery and delivery and to access the content, not necessarily just get them to the content. We can do that a whole bunch of different ways using familiar models of things that have happened within the commercial sector. And we can encourage engagement and interaction through these types of fulfillment services, rich media, related materials. It's all coming together into an experience that hopefully doesn't look like Times Square, but is actually a much more guided, sensible user experience. We know that as patrons are actually enjoying working with the service, they're much more likely to reuse it. So incorporating these services into the discovery layer basically means that we're keeping them longer and delivering better service. So with that, I'd like to end and turn it over to Scott.
Okay, we have a couple of questions that have come in. This one is directed at Christine. Christine, you mentioned that you have 3 billion records in your record.
Scott, I can actually not hear you.
Yep, Scott, you're kind of breaking up there.
Okay. You mentioned that you had 3 billion records in your index. Who are we?
Oh, who's the we in the 3 billion records? Is it ProQuest?
Oh,
is it
okay.
Exlibris? Who's the we?
Okay, sorry, I didn't quite hear that. Sorry, I should have mentioned that earlier. This is about Exlibris. It's about Exlibris Discovery Indexes. It's not related to the ProQuest indexes.
Okay, Alan, this question is directed at you. Where is the data from the table that you displayed from?
That is actually from Alexa, the top 500 websites.
Okay. Another question that's come in is directed at Christine. Could you elaborate a bit more on how you will be exposing CDI content to Google or Google Scholar? What might the end user see?
Oh, okay. We are actually not exposing CDI data to Google. Maybe that was a little bit, it was kind of not quite clear. So what we are exposing is, or what we are enabling actually the library to expose is their index data. It's not really us publishing anything. Now, I'm not a linked data expert. Luckily enough, I have colleagues who are experts in that. So I'm a little bit, on thin ice here with what I'm saying. But we are implementing things like schema.org to just enable people to publish their content out of our indexes to Google. We're not doing this without, anyone knowing about it, or it's really the library's decision what they're going to do there. We are the enabler here in this context.
Okay, the next question is for Alan. What version of Primo are you using? Are you using Primo Classic or Primo VE?
Using Primo with back office, not VE. But again, I want to be clear about something. The Primo customization framework would allow the Iliad demonstration that I just did to, it could happen there as well. The idea behind the customization framework is that regardless of what version of Primo you're in, those types of microservices could actually be injected in either interface. The customization framework is basically the same.
Okay, this one's for Christine. Regarding Topic Explorer, how are these related topics generated? Does it rely on controlled vocabulary such as subject headings or something else?
We haven't decided yet. This is an initial project. So in this initial project, we're just using just a list of topics. We haven't decided yet if we are really going to use controlled vocabulary or if we are moving to other mechanisms. There are mechanisms actually to extract concepts and topics by algorithms rather than using controlled vocabulary. So there are different ways to achieve the same thing. We haven't really decided that, and I should emphasize we're really experimenting at this point.
Okay. Another question that's come in is Ex Libris working with Google EDU for library holdings to be weighted at the top of the results?
I'm going to answer that. This was a harebrained idea that I had, but I was basically using Google EDU. I don't know if they are or not. I was actually the person who was making the suggestion that since Google actually knew domain names and they also knew login credentials and login, basically exposing the entire EDU person schema when they log in, that could potentially be a variable that they could use for your localized boosting. Christine, you can talk about whether you guys are working with Google or not.
Not that I'm aware of, but we are, we are doing things with Google, but not that specific project. I'm not aware of it, at least.
Okay, this question is directed at Christine. Are Primo and Summon going to be completely replaced by CDI, or what's the influence on CDI on Primo and Summon?
No, and I think I did mention this actually at the beginning. We are going to keep Summon and Primo. They're both our flagship discovery systems, so we are absolutely going to keep them. CDI is not a discovery system. The CDI is a discovery index. So what we are replacing is Primo Central and the current Summon index. So not Summon, but the Summon index. And both Primo and Summon will access CDI for all the electronic resources, or all the centrally indexed resources, I should say. It's not just electronic resources.
Okay, we don't have any other questions at this time.
Well, there's a question that was posed to me about, can we do that now, customize having ILL requests forms where it says check availability? I'm actually going to be making the code for that available in GitHub for the Illuna conference. So you will by Dev Day of Illuna.
There was please sharing the demo you cited in your presentation. Ellen, if you have that handy and you can post it to all the participants, that would be great.
Sure. The other thing I want to say is we have done demonstrations of that ILL widget. And interestingly enough, one of the things that we found was that usage for interlibrary loan went up 130% as a result of it. kind of lending some credibility to the fact that if you make it easy for people to request things, they will. Now, the other side of that, though, is that many times people were actually requesting stuff and then saying, oh, that isn't what I wanted, so they turned it around right away and sent it back. So part of the reason that we're still kind of trying to find the sweet spot of where that is, I think actually has more to do with some of the other related services that Christine was talking about. Like if we could deliver a look inside service that people could actually take a look at some of the content of the ebook, I think we would actually reduce a number of those short loans.
Okay, we did receive one late question, Christine. This one's targeted at you. Is there a summon plugin for the Blackboard online course software that will help course developers easily integrate library resources into their courses?
There's no plugin for Blackboard. Summon does work with Blackboard. We have some customers who work with Blackboard actually, and Summon. About the integrating library resources into the courses, they can probably use just placing it as a search widget into Blackboard. I'm not so familiar with Blackboard, I have to say, but there's no plug-in that you can just use for that.
Okay, since there are no other questions, Mark, do you want to make some concluding remarks?
Sure thing. Yeah, absolutely. So I would just say thank you, Christine, and thank you, Alan, for these wonderful presentations. I think it was really interesting, and I think, yeah, you can see in the Q&A some of the responses we've gotten from the attendees. So I think it's a very positive response. I'd also take a moment to remind the folks listening in today that we did record today's program, so please be on the lookout for a follow-up email from ACRL and Choice with a link to that recording. Also, you should see in your chat box there a link to our brief 5-question survey. If you could take a minute to fill that out to let us know how we did today, we would really appreciate that. And so I would just say thanks to everybody out there for joining us today. I hope you enjoyed the session, and I hope the rest of your day is great. So thanks very much.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.